welcome to see almost brand new artillery fortifications. What we'll do is we'll go and have a look at the castle's medieval gate. Just before we go though, I'm going to draw your attention back to this building up here, one of the statues around the outside, the palace building. Now, the palace has been recently refurbished, and you can go in there and have a look around. I'm not going to take you in myself. I'll show you how to get into it later and tell you what to do there. But the outside of it has got its own story as well, because these statues are high fashion for the day. 1530s, the oldest Renaissance palace in the British Isles. They are not random decoration, they tell a story. If you're approaching Stirling Castle, this is the first wall of the palace you would see, so therefore chapter 1 of the story. And on the face of it, it's a rather odd chapter, because at the top you have a row of soldiers, and the bigger statues down below are demons and the devil. This is bad government. Now you think, why would the king advertise bad government in his palace? But what he's saying is that's my childhood. But you see, young James comes to the throne. All too many Scottish kings were in the same position. They came to the throne as children, and there was a drill for this. The nobles would set up a government. They would run the country on behalf of the boy king, and when he becomes old enough, they hand over power to him. Now, it was accepted, it wasn't approved of, but it was accepted that the nobles running the country, of course, are going to look after themselves and their families. There's a bit of a corruption. These things happen, so long as it was kept within reasonable bounds. Unfortunately, in James V's case, the nobles of Scotland disgraced themselves. James's childhood, think of a bone between a pack of dogs. It was an absolute anarchy. And finally, at the age of 16, James escaped, and I mean escaped, from Edinburgh. He rode hell for leather here to Stirling, raised his standard and says, "Who's loyal to me?" The nobles, who were not part of the ruling junta, came and joined. James is now in charge. So what he's saying is, that anarchy, that chaos up there, the evil that is represented by the devil and the demons, that was my childhood. But I'm in charge now, so it's going to get better. And there was gold leaf decoration around the gates, and the royal coat of arms of the King of Scots in full colour high above your heads. You're under no illusion. You're coming into one of the most important buildings in this kingdom. It's still a very viable defence, and of course, the sheer height, of course, but more than that. If we were standing here, saying about 1500, you'd be standing on top of a wooden drawbridge, looking down towards the town of Stirling. These walls they've just come off of course, they don't exist at that point. And what is now the garden, the ramp beneath your feet, the cafe, was the moat, the defensive ditch of the castle, 60 feet deep. There's no water in that bit, it's 60 feet. Who needs water? There was cannons in the walls. Little wrought iron things are firing stone cannonballs at the size of an orange. Very primitive by later standard, but at the time this is high-tech, state-of-the-art defence. We have these slots on either side. These are not for bows and arrows or crossbows. Get with the times. These are for guns. Early from a musket called a hackbutt. Now, if you get into either one of the passages, you'll find a little round room. The round room is the guard room. But as you walk in and look at the floor, there's a square hatch in the floor, or directly underneath. Now, I call them dungeons. We all call them dungeons. It's actually wrong. They're not dungeons. We're so used to that word. Victorians, writing those wonderful adventure stories way back in the 19th century. Great imagination, but they were actually terrible with foreign words. And most words to do with old castles actually come from the Old French. Les donjons is the Old French word for the big tower that sits in the middle of a castle. It's where the Lord stayed, and it's a nice, comfortable place to be. You actually want to live in a dungeon. A prison in a medieval castle properly is called an oubliette. Another old French word that literally means to forget, as in once we lift the lid and drop you, and I mean drop, it's a 16-foot drop onto a stone floor. We close the lid. Bye-bye. Because these days it tends to be a bit out the way, a wee bit quieter. In actual fact, in the Middle Ages, this is where all the work is getting done, because this is where the servants are working to allow the king and his nobles to have a good time up here. So you see a lot of changes now. One change being the vehicle coming through here. So now, this first building here, built in 1800, is the Army Garrison Commander's house. We now use it as the administration offices. So yeah, there's no work done in there. The next building, the shop where we started, is the Army Guardhouse from 1790. Now of course, the shop there. However, what stood here way back in the Middle Ages was a blacksmith stable, storerooms, and right down at the corner, the cannon sits in the corner, and that's where the Elphinstone Tower would rise up. Huge big tower rising up the corner here. Coming along to the left, we've got a row of cannons, and this building with the white painted windows This is all put in 1689. This is part of the army's upgraded the defences of the castle. Those guns have a clear view, and you're well within the accurate range of that river bridge down there. No one crosses that bridge unless we say so. It's as simple as that. However, what stood there before the guns were put in was the medieval kitchens. Indeed, part of the kitchens are still there. Head for the building there with the white painted windows, and you'll find the door to the kitchens just in on the right hand side. Restored as if they were making a banquet in the 1500s. If you're a vegetarian, you might want to think twice about it. The upper part, where the guns now sit, there was a level of buildings there. There were storerooms attached to the kitchens and a brewery. A vital part of every castle was a brewery. But you see, we've got a well. Now that well, to this day, there's 30 feet of water down there. I would not recommend it. And in the Middle Ages, they also knew better. You do not drink the water out the well. You take it to the brewery, you turn it into beer. Everyone drinks beer, children included. And of course, in making beer, you actually boil the water, it kills the germs and makes it drinkable. So the water is bad, but the beer is good. It's not so different today, really. Actually, it gets better. As a servant in the castle, your daily wages would include 1 loaf of bread and 2 pints of beer every day. 2 Scottish pints. Because before the Act of Union of 1707, in Scotland we then had to adopt English weights and measures. Before then, 1 Scottish pint is equal to 3 English pints. That's why they're called the good old days. And the beer is seriously stronger as well. In modern terms, you're getting paid 6 pints of super strength beer every day as part of your breakfast. It could explain a great deal about the history of the Middle Ages. However, follow the slope down, you come to a building, that's the angle down there, that's the old north gate of the castle. It's the oldest part of the castle still standing, going back to 1381. Up there was the Royal Mint, and there we made the silver pennies, the unicorns, the gold bonnet pieces of the Scottish coinage. Later on it became part of the kitchen complex. Go down through the north gate, you will find the nether bailey, and there we kept wagons, livestock, gunpowder, big row of gunpowder stores, and at the far end, as far as you can possibly go, a little studio where we're making a set of tapestries, literally a stitch at a time, and they're going to get to the Queen's apartments. Now I'm not going to take you down to the studio, simply don't have time, but it's open now, and it'll stay open until 5 o'clock today. At 1 o'clock, the weavers will give a talk, explain what they're doing, but there's always a member of staff there anyway. If you can't make that, ask away. It's hypnotic. But you'll see the 4 completed tapestries in the Queen's apartments, the palace up here. Now, the palace, you could actually get in at least that first room. You're entitled to walk in. The King and Queen did what today you call a walkabout. They're meeting the people. Scottish people, we tend to work better with someone who leads from the front, not some person far away giving orders. So this personal kind of leadership, they're mingling with the people, they're talking to folk, playing cards, diplomatically losing, sit and have a small meal and have a bit of snack with them, getting to know your people. I'm not saying it was all backslapping and bonhomie, it wasn't. There was deference, there was respect, but there was a lot less formality than there was in their equivalents in England and France and other places in Europe. However, if you come here for a proper audience, yes, you're in the guard room to find out who you are. You come into the throne room. If you're very important, say you're a foreign ambassador, you get into the bedroom. The bedroom does have a bed in it, but very rarely would you actually sleep in it. It's more of a private reception room. Think of the Oval Office in the White House, but with a 4-poster bed sitting in the corner. I think Bill Clinton had that. Anyway. However, they have the private chambers, they're called the closets. Now the Queen's closets we've lost because they were in the tower that stood here, of course, that's gone. But the King's closets do still exist, and from our point of view, just behind where the King's bedroom is, and you can see them once you go in. Now, King James V, Mary Queen of Scots' father, he builds this place. He knew how to build a palace, because here he has his apartments and access to the Queen's apartments, and from his own private chambers, a little staircase goes up. See that window up there, top right? That room is for the King's mistress. Good to be the King. Now you might think James's wife, Queen Marie, had a bad time having to share the palace with the King's latest girlfriend. Fair point. However, some queens had it worse than others. For Mary Queen of Scots' son is James VI of Scotland. He inherited the throne of England, became James I of England. He went south. He did come back to visit, and he stayed here in the King's apartments, as is only right and proper. His wife is Queen Anne, she came from Denmark, she stayed in the Queen's apartments, again only right and proper. But the room for the King's mistress, well, it was occupied by the Duke of Buckingham. I'm not going to go into that story.